Dear students, welcome back. Today we are going to learn about another IoT access technology IEEE 1901.2a, which is a wired technology. It is an update to the original IEEE 1901.2 specification. So you can see there is an appending of a small letter A. In the previous class we studied that if any letter is appended, small letter is appended with a standard, it is an upgraded version. This is a standard for narrowband power line communication. In short, it is called as NBPLC. So this standard IEEE 1901.2a is a standard for narrowband power line communication NBPLC. NBPLC influence a narrowband spectrum for power line for low power, long range and resistance to the interference. Over the same wires that carry electric power. So we'll discuss this in detail. So here in this diagram you can see the broadband signal, and the difference between the broadband signal and the narrowband signal is described. So broadband means it gets a long range of frequencies, bandwidth, but the narrow band gets a small bandwidth, but the power of data rate will be more in narrow band signal, but the power of data rate will be less, but it can transmit large amount of data. And also the narrow band can cover a longer range than the broadband signal. Hence, here it is said that NBPLC is a low power, power consumption is less, long range, it covers a long range, and it is also resistant to interference. So you can see the green lines here on this diagram is the noise. So here as it is covering a small portion of this, the noise the interference to the signal will also be very less. So coming back to this NBPLC, it influences the narrowband spectrum for all these characteristics, and over the same wire it carries electric power also. That means on the same wire it carries the data as well as electric power. So electric power cables are already established everywhere. So same cables can be used for transmitting electric power as well as the data. So let us see, I have given a link here for NBPLC. Let us see how actually the NBPLC works. So let us look at the video how actually the PLC works.
Hello everyone. In this video we're going to talk about a technology called powerline networking. Now sometimes there might be cases in your home or office where you wanted a certain computer in a certain part of the building to be able to access the internet. But for whatever reason, network cabling or Wi-Fi just wasn't an option in that part of the building. Maybe because of difficulties in the structure of the building or interference or whatever. So to help solve this kind of problem, a newer technology gave the ability to network using the existing electrical system of the building. Powerline networking gives the ability of Ethernet networking over power. So for example, let's say you needed this computer up here to be able to access the internet. But for some reason you can't get any network cables or any Wi-Fi signal to reach that computer. So in this case, we're going to use powerline networking. So we're going to need a couple of powerline adapters like these here, and these powerline adapters plug directly into a power outlet, and they have a built-in Ethernet port for an RJ45 connector. So one adapter plugs into the power outlet next to the modem or router down here, and then you would plug an Ethernet cable from the modem or router into the powerline adapter. Then you would plug the other powerline adapter into the power outlet next to this computer up here, and then you would connect an Ethernet cable from the network port of the computer into the powerline adapter's Ethernet port. So now Ethernet network data will use the building's existing electrical wiring to deliver networking data to the other power line adapter so that the computer can access the internet. Now, power line networking works similar to DSL technology because in DSL, the same phone line is able to carry both data and voice, but they are on different frequencies, which is very similar to how power line networking works, where the same lines are used to carry electricity and network data at different frequencies. So this is an extremely convenient option to have, especially when running new cables is too much of a hassle or if there's too much interference to use Wi-Fi. You can just simply use the building's existing electrical wiring to network data. And that's pretty much it. There is no software configuration or real hardware configuration. You just plug in the adapters and plug in the network cables and you're ready to go. And if you're interested in getting some of these power line adapters, I have a link in the description below of the network adapters that I recommend.
Well, that is fantastic, right? Let us see the other characteristics of NBPLC. The application areas of NBPLC are the smart metering. We have discussed this in the previous class. NBPLC can be used to automate the reading of utility meters such as electric meters, gas meters, and water meters. In Europe, PLC is the preferred technology. Then also another application is distribution automation. NBPLC is used for distribution automation, which involves monitoring and controlling all the devices in the power grid. So we have seen also the power grid. What is power grid in the previous class? The smart grid we have seen. So in that power grid, distribution and automation is also taken up by NBPLC. Then public lighting. The lights found in cities, along the streets, highways and public areas such as parks. Then electric vehicle charging stations where the batteries of electric vehicles can be recharged. Then microgrids we have seen in the previous class where the a particular area it will locally generate the power required for that area, and if any extra power is generated it will also transfer that energy to some other work. So that is microgrid. Then renewable energy. NBPLC can be used in renewable energy applications such as solar, wind power, hydroelectric and geothermal heat. All these use cases require a direct connection to the power grid. So it makes sense to transport IoT data across power grid connections that are already in place, isn't it? So the power lines are already implanted across the world. So using that power line, we can transmit the data. So there is no necessity of investing on the infrastructure. So next, let us see the standardization and alliance of NBPLC. The first generations of NBPLC was popular in Europe but have often suffered from. So this is the first generation of NBPLC was popular in Europe, but it has drawbacks like poor reliability, low throughput of 100 bits per second to maximum of 2 kilobits per second, lack of manageability and poor interoperability. So these were the drawbacks of NBPLC first generation, which was used in Europe. This led to several organizations to develop their own specifications for new generations of NBPLC technologies. The IEEE 1901.2 working group established IEEE 1901.2a, which is an advanced version specification in November 2013. IEEE 1901.2a standard leverages the earlier standards G3 PLC and Prime. So it leverages the technologies which were earlier existing, which are G3 PLC and prime. So I will talk about G3PLC and prime in the next slides. It supports wide range of frequencies at physical layer and has feature-rich MAC layer based on 802.15.4 IEEE standard. Goal is to enable hybrid smart grid networks that support both wireless and powerline wired connectivity. So the goal of this 1901.2a is to enable a hybrid smart grid which can support both wireless and wired, that is the two powerline wired connectivity using the powerline cables. So let us see about the physical layer of 1901.2a technology. NBPLC is defined for frequency bands from 3 to 500 kilohertz. Regional regulations and definitions apply to NBPLC. That means in which region the NBPLC is used. So in that region, the local regulations are also applicable. The IEEE 1901.2 working group has integrated support for all world regions in order to develop a worldwide standard. Specifications include support for Senelec A and B brands, US FCC low and FCC above Senelec, and Japan ARIB bands. So we'll see this bands diagram in the next slides. Senelec is the French. So what is the full form of Senelec? In French, it is Comité Européen de Normalisation Electrotechnique. In English, it is European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardization. It is the full form of Senelec. This organization is responsible for standardization in the area of electrical engineering for Europe. The Senelec A and B bands refer to 9 to 95 kHz and 95 to 125 kHz respectively. The FCC stands for Federal Communications Commission. It is a US government organization that regulates interstate and international communications by radio, television, wire, satellite and cable. So in the previous slide we saw that NBPLC regional regulations are applicable. So here Senelec A and B are for Europe, FCC is in US. It is the same NBPLC. The FCC low band encompasses 37.5 to 117.1875 kHz and the FCC above Senelec band is 154.6875 to 487.5 kHz. The FCC above Senelec band may become the most useful frequency due to its higher throughput and reduced interference. So FCC above Senelec has higher throughput and reduced interference. So it is most useful. Japan Association. So now we studied about the Europe and the US. So now the Japan Association of Radio Industries and Business, that is in short ARIB, Association of Radio Industries and Businesses. Frequency bands are having the frequency. There are two ARIBs, ARIB 1 and ARIB 2. ARIB 1 37.5 to 117.1875 kHz and ARIB 2 154.6875 to 403.125 kHz. So here you can see NBPLC frequency bands in this diagram. So here it is FCC low, this is FCC above Senelec, this is ARIB 1, this is ARIB 2, and here you can see Senelec bands A, B, C and D. So this whole frequency band range from 3 kHz to 490 kHz. So FCC is used in US, ARIB is used in Japan and Senelec bands are used in Europe. To enable robustness and throughput, the standard includes tone maps and modulations. So as we have seen in earlier standards also in physical layer, different modulation techniques are used to enhance the throughput. So here also we have some modulation techniques. Robust modulation, in short it is ROBO. Differential binary phase shift keying. Differential quadrature phase shift keying. Differential 8-point phase shift keying for all bands, and 16 quadrature amplitude modulation optionally for some bands. It is applicable optionally for some bands. The physical layer payload size can change dynamically. We have seen that payload is variable based on channel conditions in IEEE 1901.2a. Based on the channel conditions as we discussed just now, the payload of the physical layer will change dynamically. Therefore, max sublayer segmentation is implemented. That means if the size of the MAC payload is too large to fit within physical layer service data unit, that is PSDU, the MAC payload is partitioned into smaller segments. If the MAC payload is very large, we cannot fit into PSDU. We have seen in the previous case, in previous technologies, that the physical layer PSDU is nothing but the MAC layer, isn't it? So if the MAC layer payload is too large that it cannot be accommodated in physical layer PSDU, so MAC layer will be partitioned into smaller segments. The segmentation may require the addition of padding bytes to the last payload segment so that the final MPDU fills the PSDU. That means when the MAC payload is divided into smaller fragments, at the end, if it is not having sufficient bytes to fill the total PSDU, then the additional bits will be added. Suppose if it is 127 bytes for a fragment, but it is having only 120 bytes, then 7 bytes will be added to make it 127 bytes. So that is the meaning here. So coming to the MAC layer, that is all the discussion of the physical layer. Coming to the MAC layer of IEEE 1901.2a, which is NBPLC. The MAC frame format of IEEE 1901.2a is based on the IEEE 802.15.4 MAC frame, but integrates the latest IEEE 802.15.4e, which we have seen in the previous class, of 2012 version amendment, which enables key features to be supported. So what are those key features? So it is based on IEEE 802.15.4 MAC, but it also integrates the latest features of 802.15.4e 2012 amendment by adding some key features. One of the key components brought from 802.15.4e to 1901.2a is information elements, IEs. We have seen in the previous class, right? Information elements, that is also brought into 1901.2a. With IE support, additional capabilities such as IEEE 802.15.9 Key Management Protocol and SSID are supported. So with this information element support, additional two features. One is Key Management Protocol and the other one is the SSID are also supported. So what is this key management? Key management is generation of keys, exchange of keys, storage, use, replacement and destruction of keys. So all aspects of key management is dealt with by this key management protocol. Then SSID. SSID stands for Service Set Identifier, used for naming wireless networks. So we know that each wireless network will have an identifier. So that identifier is given by this, is identified by this SSID. So here we can see the general MAC frame format of IEEE 1901.2. So here we have seen the other MAC layers also of other technologies. Same fields are retained here. the frame control is there, sequence number is there. These are the addressing area, destination pan identifier, destination address, source pan identifier, source address. Then the auxiliary security header will be activated when there is a bit called security enable bit in the frame control. If it is set to 1, then auxiliary security header will be added into the MAC frame. Then information elements, which we saw in the previous slide, which gives key management and SSID features. Then the payload of the frame, payload of the MAC frame, and also frame check sequence, which is the footer. So here the extra thing is the segment control field is a new field. So you can see here this is the segment control, which is a new field that was not present in our earlier discussions. This segment control field handles segmentation of upper layer packets with sizes larger than the MAC protocol data unit, which is MPDU. In the previous slide, we saw that if the MAC frame is not fitting within the 5-layer payload, then it need to be fragmented. So that fragmentation is handled by this segment control. Then comes the topology. What topology is used in 19012 2A? Topologies for this standard are tied to the physical power lines. So how the power lines are established, based on that the topology varies. Signal propagation is limited by the factors such as noise, interference, distortion and attenuation. These factors increase with distance. So the noise, interference, distortion and attenuation will increase with distance. So most NBPLC deployments use the mesh topology because it uses hops. So distance can be fragmented, right? So there will be less chance of noise, interference, distortion and attenuation. Hence, the mesh topology is suitable for NBPLC deployments. Mesh networks offer an advantage of devices relying the traffic of other devices, so longer distances can be segmented. So using hops, it will travel from one source to destination, so the distances will be segmented. So this is how you can see, this is IPv6 mesh in NBPLC. So here you can see different lines of different colors. So if there is a color of a line of red color, it represents one hop. Then green color 2 hops, blue color 3 hops and purple color 4 hops. So you can see the different colored lines available here between the nodes of a mesh topology with different number of hops. Then about the security of this standard, encryption and authentication are performed using AES. So most of the technologies are using AES algorithm for ensuring security. IEEE 1901.2a aligns 802.15.4G in its ability to support the IEEE 802.15.9 key management protocol. So it is using a 15.9 key management protocol with 802.15.4G in 2A. However, some differences exist with respect to physical layer fragmentation capabilities, which include the security enabled bit in frame control field should be set in all MAC frames carrying segments of an encrypted frame. So previously in earlier technologies we saw that if the security enabled bit is 1, then the auxiliary security bit will be added, but here it should be always set to 1. It says that the security enable bit in the frame control field should be set in all MAC frames carrying segments of an encrypted frame. Data encryption should be done before packet segmentation. So data encryption means conversion of one form of data to some other form of data in order to provide security for the data from unauthenticated users. So data encryption should be done before the packet is segmented. Because before the packet is fragmented, the encryption should be done. On the receiver side, the decryption of the data must be done after the reassembly, packet reassembly. When security is enabled, the MAC payload is composed of the ciphered payload and the message integrity code authentication tag for non-segmented payloads. If the payload is segmented, the MIC is part of the last packet segment only. See, MIC should be there with all the packets as a part, but if it is fragmented, if the payload is fragmented, it is segmented, then MIC will be a part of the last packet itself. It will not be a part of every fragment. Next, coming to the competitive technologies, IEEE 19.012A faces competition from G3 PLC and Prime. So what are these G3 PLC and Prime? It is not given in the textbook, so I have added here. G3 stands for third gen, PLC is power line communication. It facilitates high speed, highly reliable, long range communication over the existing power line grid. Prime stands for power line. So you can see here power line, PRIME, power line intelligent metering evaluation. It is a specification for narrow band power line communication. So both of these technologies were initially developed to address a single use case, that is smart metering deployment in Europe over CENELAC A band. So that is about the IEEE 1901.28 technology. Next we will step on to another technology, IoT access technology, which is IEEE 802.11 AH. In unconstrained network, unconstrained means it is not working under a constrained environment. No power restriction, no memory restriction, and no processing power restriction. So such kind of networks are unconstrained networks. IEEE 802.11 Wi-Fi is certainly the most successful deployed wireless technology for connecting endpoints such as fog computing nodes, high data rate sensors, and audio or video analytic devices. That means it is very popular Wi-Fi in unconstrained networks to connect the points such as fog computing nodes. Fog is about the edge, we have studied that. High data rate sensors and audio or video analytic devices. Or for deploying Wi-Fi backhaul infrastructures. Backhaul means the technology which is used for connecting the gateway to the server. So that is backhaul. For deploying Wi-Fi backhaul infrastructure such as outdoor Wi-Fi mesh in smart cities or oil and mining, etc. So it is used for that. It is very popular technology for Wi-Fi connecting the points as discussed here, and also for deploying backhaul infrastructures for smart cities and oil and mining industries. But Wi-Fi lacks sub-gigahertz support for better signal penetration, low power for battery powered nodes, and the ability to support a large number of devices. So Wi-Fi has these drawbacks. It lacks sub-gigahertz support. So we'll see what is this sub-gigahertz supports sub-gigahertz in the next slide. So Wi-Fi is having these drawbacks, better signal penetration. So we know that it cannot travel for a longer range between the buildings. Low power for better powered nodes, that battery powered nodes. That means like if in your phone, if you switch on the Wi-Fi, we'll always not be switching on the Wi-Fi because it will consume much power. So it is not good for the battery powered nodes, and also ability to support a large number of devices. So large number of devices it could not connect. So these are the drawbacks of Wi-Fi. Hence, IEEE 802.11 working group launched a task group named IEEE 802.11AH in order to take off these drawbacks in 2017 to be called Wi-Fi Halo. It is another flavor of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi Halo. We'll see what is it. It offers an extended range than traditional Wi-Fi. So here we saw that range is a problem. It is a drawback of Wi-Fi. So it provides the Wi-Fi Halo provides an extended range than the traditional Wi-Fi and good support for low power devices which send small bursts of data at low speed. Sub-gigahertz technology is used for such devices only, which send small amount of data with low speed. Characteristics match sub-gigahertz technology characteristics match these low data rate devices needs. Sub-gigahertz offer simple wireless solutions that can operate continuously on battery power alone for up to 20 years. So that is very good. So let us see what is this sub-gigahertz. Sub-gigahertz networking gets its name from the fact that the radio frequency is lower than 1 gigahertz because in the previous slide we saw that um, it is good for small devices sending small bursts of data at lower speed. Hence, this is the supporting point. It radio frequency for sub-gigahertz devices lower than the 1 gigahertz. The actual frequency is different in different parts of the world. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth both use the same 2.4 gigahertz band everywhere in the world. Okay, so Wi-Fi and Bluetooth use 2.4 gigahertz everywhere in the world, but sub-gigahertz frequency is different in different parts of the world. Let us see what. The Americas, most of Asia, and Oceania uses 915 megahertz as the center frequency, whereas Europe, Africa, and other parts of Asia use 868 megahertz. The different aspects, which is less than 1 gigahertz, the different aspects of sub-gigahertz networking that make it stand out among its competing technologies like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are what different aspects it is supporting is low radio frequency, longer range it covers, and also power consumption is less. This comes at a price of a slower transmission speed. So if you get all these advantages, there is an exception that it is having a slower transmission speed. The most commonly used standard for sub-gigahertz packet radios is IEEE 802.15.4G. The three main use cases are identified for 802.11AHR sensors and meters covering a smart grid like in the areas of environmental agricultural monitoring, industrial process sensors, indoor healthcare system and fitness sensors, home and building automation sensors. Then backhaul aggregation of industrial sensors and metadata. It is potentially connecting IEEE 802.15.4G subnetworks in extended range Wi-Fi for outdoor extended range hotspot when distance is already covered by IEEE 802.11 A, B, G, N, A, C flavors are not good enough, then 802.11 AH can be used for uh, extended range. Let us study about the standardization and alliance of this technology. In July 2010, the IEEE 802.11 working group decided to work on an industrial Wi-Fi and created this AH group. This AH standard, the Wi-Fi Alliance defined a new brand called Wi-Fi Halo. We studied in the previous slide. This marketing name is based on a play on words between 11AH in reverse. AH in reverse is HA. So this AH in reverse is HA and low power. So HA low. So that is Halo. Wi-Fi Halo. It is called as Wi-Fi Halo, a new brand name. It is similar to the word hello, but it is pronounced as halo. Halo. The Halo brand exclusively covers IEEE 802.11h for sub-gigahertz device certification. Physical layer of the technology is based on OFDM modulation, which we saw in the previous slides. IEEE 802.11h uses channels of 2, 4, 8 or 16 megahertz and 1 megahertz for low bandwidth transmission. That is sub gigahertz we saw in the previous slide. A data rate of 100 kilobits per second, the outdoor transmission range is expected to be 0.62 mile. The IEEE 802.11 AC standard is a high-speed wireless LAN protocol at the 5 GHz band capable of speeds up to 1 gigabits per second. Coming to the MAC layer, the IEEE 802.11ah MAC layer is optimized to support the new sub-gigahertz Wi-Fi physical layer while providing low power consumption and ability to support larger number of endpoints. This we saw, these are the advantages of sub-gigahertz. So it supports devices which consumes less power and also provides a network construction with large number of endpoints. Enhancements and features specified by IEEE 802.11h for MAC layer include. So what MAC layer enhancements in this technology are: the number of devices are scaled up to 8192 per access point. The devices 8192 devices per access point can be connected. Then the MAC header is shortened to allow more efficient communication. Then addition of null data packet NDP is extended to cover several control and management frames. So what is this NDP is? It is a null data frame. It is just a control frame. It doesn't carry any data or a payload. It carries the power management bit in the frame control field. The power management bit will be either 0 or it will be 1. So what happens if it is 0 or 1? Let us see. If it is a 0, STA is in an active station. STA station is in an active power state. That means it is in the awake state, and transmission of frames from access point to station should be normal if it is 0. If the power management bit is 0, station is in awake state and the transmission happens normal. If it is 1, informing the access point that the station is going offline and the frames that come into the access point for this station should be buffered till it becomes into the active state, which is 0. Okay, so that is how this power management bit is made use of. Power management bit can be set to either 0 or 1. If it is set to 0, the station will become active and the transmission is normal. But if it is set to 1, it is informing the access point that the station is going offline for some time and the data which is coming to this station should be buffered till it becomes active. Grouping and sectorization. So this is also an important feature of MAC layer, which enables an access point to use sector antennas and also group stations. So it will be useful for enabling the access points to use sector antenna. Sectorization means it will be grouped. I will show you, wait. Yeah, this is sectorization. Sectorization means access point and its base stations are sectored. This is one sector, this is another sector. So like one sector communicating to another sector through this beam. So there will be no interference for other stations which are existing in this sector. So that is the advantage. Sectorization means grouping of station and its access point in a particular sector so that the other stations signals will not be interfered. So that is sectorization, that is done through beam framing. So this you can see, this is beam framing. So this symbol you might have seen in Wi-Fi connection, right? So beam framing means the to the person or to the device to which you want to communicate. From the access point, a beam is framed and only to that device you will be allowed to communicate through this beam, so that the interference between the different beams will be, or the different device transmission will be avoided. So this beam is communicating to this device, this beam is communicating to this device. So that is the sectorization. This mechanism reduces contention, traffic and interference problems in large cells with many clients by restricting which group in which sector can contend during which time window. To which device you would like to communicate at a particular time, you can communicate only to that device. Then restricted access window RAW is a control algorithm that avoids simultaneous transmissions when many devices are present and provides fair access to the wireless network. So when many devices are trying for accessing the technology, then it avoids simultaneous transmission and it gives the fair access to all the devices. Then the target wake time reduces energy consumption by permitting an access point to define time when a device can access the network. So time frames will be given, time quantum will be given to each device. So only in that time the device can communicate. Otherwise, it will not try for communication, which reduces the energy consumption of the device and also it avoids the traffic. This allows devices to enter a low power state until their TWT time arrives. So the device will be in the sleeping mode. Whenever it TWT target wake time comes, it will wake up and transmits the data. Speed frame exchange enables an AP, that is access point and end point, to exchange frames during the reserve transmit opportunity, which is called as TXOP, reserve transmit opportunity. That means the time duration for which a station can send frames after gaining contention for the transmission medium. That means when it gets control over the transmission medium, then it can send the frame for a particular amount of time. So that time duration is TXOP, reserved transmit opportunity. This reduces contention on the medium, minimizes the number of frame exchanges to improve channel efficiency, and extends battery life because most of the devices will be in the sleeping mode. Whenever they get their target wake time, then only they will transmit. Then the topology of this technology is usually a star topology. It includes a simple hops relay operation to extend its range. It allows one 802.11ah device to act as an intermediary and relay data to another. In some ways, this is similar to a mesh. The clients and not the access point handle the relay function. So this is something different. Client will uh, client will handle the relay function but not the access points. The transmit rate reduces as you move further from the access point via relay client so that communication close to access point are not negatively affected. Sectorization technique is partitioning the coverage area into several sectors to get reduced contention with a certain sector. This I have shown you with that diagram. Useful for limiting collisions in cells that have many clients. Necessary when coverage area is large and interference from neighboring access points is problematic. Sectorization uses an antenna array and beamforming techniques to partition the cell coverage area. So this I told you the beamforming technique is used by sectorization to communicate to a particular device. So let us see, I have given you a link here for beamforming. Let us see what is this beamforming.
Today's cellular antennas broadcast information in every direction at once, and all of those crossing signals could cause serious interference. Beamforming is like a traffic signaling system for cellular signals. Instead of broadcasting in every direction, it would allow a base station to send a focused stream of data to a specific user. This precision prevents interference and it's way more efficient. That means stations could handle more incoming and outgoing data streams at once. Here's how it works. Say you're in a cluster of buildings and you're trying to make a phone call. Your signal is ricocheting off of surrounding buildings and crisscrossing with other signals from users in the area. A massive MIMO base station receives all of these signals and keeps track of the timing and the direction of their arrival. It then uses signal processing algorithms to triangulate exactly where each signal is coming from and plots the best transmission route back through the air to each phone. Sometimes it'll even bounce individual packets of data in different directions, off of buildings or other objects to keep signals from interfering with each other. The result is a coherent data stream sent only to you.
This we have already seen. So how the area of particular device is sectored into different sectors and they communicate through beamforming so that it avoids interference between the signals which are generated in different sectors. The security, no additional security has been identified for this standard to other specifications. The security for 802.15.4 and E and 1908.2A, which we studied earlier, is also applicable to 802.11AH. That means AES security algorithm is used, and also the auxiliary security bits and security enable bit technology is also available here for enabling the security. Then competitive technologies. The competitive technologies for this IEEE 802.11AH are IEEE 802.15.4 and 15.4E. These are the competitive technologies along with the competitive technologies which are there for these standards. These standards along with their competitive technologies which we studied are -7. So that is also a competitive technology for 802.11AH. So next topic is LoRaWAN. It is another technology. We'll study about this technology in the next class. So let us wind up for today. Thank you all. Have a good day. We'll study about LoRaWAN in the next class.